Welcome to the Gita in Action podcast. My name's Radha Priti, and I am here with a group of seekers. We are reading through the Bhagavad Gita. This is our 25th episode today. So we've been at this for over 3 months now. So that's pretty exciting. You can join us live by going to our Instagram at Seekers Quest 108, clicking on the bio, which is a link tree, and then you can click on the WhatsApp group and get into our WhatsApp group where you get updates. And I also send out the YouTube video after every session too. So you can join us live that way, or you can listen to us on any podcast platform, Seekers Quest or YouTube. So thank you all for being here. It makes my week to see you all. And we are in a really fun part of the Gita right now. We are in chapter 2, text 61, and we're still in this question where, we're in the response to a question from Arjuna when he asked Krishna, what are the characteristics of a perfected yogi? How do they engage their senses, restrain their senses? What are their key characteristics? How do they move about, respond to life's ups and downs? So Krishna is answering that. The question was posed in the 54th text. And so Krishna will answer that through through the end of the chapter. And right now we are on text 61. And we'll just get right into it. Just share my screen for this verse. One second. Okay, text 61. There we go. One who restrains his senses, keeping them under full control, and fixes his consciousness upon me, is known as a man of steady intelligence. So this verse is the continuation of the answer to restraining the senses that's been being answered in 58, starting here through 63. So we're going through this, how a perfected yogi restrains their senses. 58 says that if we restrain, we have to withdraw. Maybe I'll share this again so we can just go through this recap. 58 says, this was the tortoise verse, 58. If you remember the little tortoise with his legs extended, and Krishna says, we have to draw the limbs in. We have to draw the senses in like a tortoise draws his limbs in. So we have to know when to extend our senses, when they're helpful for us in navigating this world, and when they make us vulnerable, when we have to pull them in. So we have to get expert at that. And then 59 says that withdrawing alone will be restless, right? Because we talked about the inner desire remains. So even if we don't have that outer extension, that's only sustainable for so long because that inner desire remains in our minds. And we also have to conquer that. And so that's where we talked about getting a higher taste, directing our consciousness towards something higher. And then 60 says that even a person who is discriminating and endeavoring can fall victim to their senses, right? So it's, again, kind of a warning us, the senses are really strong, and also telling us, it's going to be natural for you to have some fall downs and to stumble around a little bit. So be patient with yourself. This is part of the process, but at the same time, know how strong the senses are and don't undermine them. So it's kind of a little bit of a warning. So now 61 is saying that for a higher taste to be gained, there must be regulation of the senses. And we talked about that quite a bit, setting boundaries for ourselves according to our unique circumstances and our unique karmic package, right? What we're dealing with here, what we know that we are particularly drawn to or particularly prone to going overboard on. So we talked about kind of setting up those unique boundaries for ourselves, but also redirecting the consciousness to something higher. We talked about, we're creatures of pleasure. We seek pleasure. That's just our makeup. And so it's not really sustainable or realistic just to say, okay, I'll take away all these things that are currently giving me pleasure, but I won't replace them with anything. That's it's only going to be sustainable for us for so long. So we have to acquire this higher taste. And that's what 61 is saying. Regulation of senses coupled with divine focus, from there we'll conquer the senses. The tortoise's limbs are out. We pull our limbs in, and at the same time, we correct this inner desire. We actually not even correct, we redirect this inner desire to something higher. And that's what spiritual life is for us. Because it's not enough just to refrain our senses from the outside, because the temptation exists in our minds. We talked about this as well. I gave an example of wanting to date somebody who I knew wasn't good for me. And I wasn't pursuing, but I was entertaining it in my mind. And sometimes I even get into that friend zone, I remember doing that too. Like, oh, we're just friends. We're just friends. We're just friends. Even though like in my mind, there was much more that existed than that, And that's like a danger zone. That's like our check engine light going off. That's like, okay, this isn't going to end well, because we can only white knuckle that temptation so long before we're going to succumb to it. Because again, we should know that this is the way our vehicle is designed. And that's what the Bhagavad Gita does for us. It's a life manual. It's like an owner's manual, the one that you have in your glove box to your vehicle. This is in the glove box to our vehicle. It's saying, this is your body. This is what you will experience. And if you want real happiness and sustained pleasure in this life, this is what you have to do. So that's what we're learning here. And none of us are immune from it. We'd love to be. It'd be so nice to say, oh no, I don't really have temptations, or I'm pretty healthy. And maybe you are, but you do have some level of temptations. Your mind will be pulled at some time in your life towards things that aren't going to bring your consciousness higher. That's just what we're doing here in this material world. Right? So we have to be careful. We have to be alert. We have to treat our consciousness like a sacred space that we protect by all means. Right? We strive to keep the temptation outside of our consciousness. Right? Just as a territory can be protected if its entry doors are closed, we too can lock the door for our consciousness by deciding to turn away from sense objects, and by using our focus to focus our senses wholeheartedly on a higher purpose, the purpose of serving divinity. And that's what this bhakti yoga practice is. It gives us all these different ways to engage our senses in serving divinity. And that's how we get real happiness. And many of us are here because we started to experience some of that. Right? Like maybe a kirtan. The kirtan, the senses are so engaged in a kirtan, and that can be so ecstatic, right? The spiritual music we listen to, or offering prasadam, offering prasadam is food that we've offered to the Lord, and then we eat the remnants. And so in that way, it becomes like spiritualized food. It's another way we can engage our senses, and we're eating the food that's the remnants of the Lord, and that's how we kind of get the connection. So we stopped struggling to turn off the inner darkness, and we start striving to turn on the inner light. So it's like we're lost in a dark room and we're stumbling around hurting ourselves. To avoid this, we don't try to turn off the darkness, right? We can't even really. How do we do that? We strive to turn on the light, and we need a similar approach to dealing with the darkness inside of us. Because this darkness that exists inside of us, we can't see things which provide pleasure and which get us in trouble. We can't really discern between the two. We think that sensual desires will give us the most pleasure. We have a little bit of experience with some sensual desires. We experience that short-term gratification, and we think, oh, this is it. If I just do more of this, more of this, more of this, then I'm going to get more pleasure, more pleasure, more pleasure. Right? And we fool ourselves into thinking that that's the way things in this material world work. I don't know if anybody else has this all or nothing mentality, but it's especially dangerous if you have an all or nothing mentality, because it's like you get, I just heard somebody chuckle, so I'm happy somebody can relate to me. You get a little bit of happiness from something, and then you think, oh, this is the way. I'm going to put all my energy and all my time and effort into this, and then I'm going to get proportionally that amount of happiness. And then it's so disappointing in this material world when we learn that that's just not the nature of things in this material world. That's not the way they work. We'll get some amount of happiness, but eventually it'll turn into poison and it'll start hurting us. And that's something I've loved about spiritual life when I came into it, is because that proportion, that correlation actually works in spiritual life, right? Like the more we put into it, the more returns that we get. It's infinite. It never demises like things in this material world, like the correlation between happiness and energy input in this material world. No, spiritual life, it's its own equation. It will just keep increasing proportional to the amount that you put in it. And it's beautiful in that way. You can't lose, because it just keeps getting sweeter and sweeter. So let's see where it was. We need a similar approach to deal with the darkness inside of us. We can't see the things that we can't tell the difference between the things that are causing us pleasure and the things that get us in trouble. And what ends up happening is they lead to attachment and then addiction. And then we get caught in these various karmic consequences that we talked about. Right? The material world is governed by karma, this law of karma, which is like whatever energy we're putting out there is the energy that we're receiving back. And that's what it is. That's why we don't want to get too, if we're acting too selfishly, consistently, it's not going to be good for us, right? That's why we talked about, before this section, we talked about trying to purify our desires, trying to be more selfless, trying to offer the fruits of our work to God. And in that way, we become immune from this system of karmic consequences, right? And we're up and operating in the spiritual world. So that's the goal here. And when we don't do that, we get caught in these karmic consequences. So through our experiences, again, many of us have had these experiences where we've played with this correlation to the death, right? I think I've done this in every area of my career success, money, relationships, sex, whatever it is. You just put everything into it, and then eventually you're like, this is not making me happy anymore. In fact, it's having a negative correlation to my happiness. My happiness is now going down, and I feel trapped. I feel controlled. I feel frustrated. I feel sad. And that's what happens. So we realize through our experiences and then our intelligence, maybe for me, I was like, oh, what's wrong with me? Why am I not happy with all of these things anymore? And I've put my entire self into them, and then you go to a therapist and you start kind of peeling back the layers and realizing this whole system has misled me. This is not actually where I even want to be. I bought into this, and it's broken glass. Thought it was diamonds, and it's broken glass. So we try to resist the desires, but we fail. Right? We realize, okay, these desires aren't making me happy. I'm not gonna do it anymore. But that's not realistic, right? It's because, again, we're creatures of pleasure. We seek pleasure. So if we don't have something to replace it, it's not going to work. So that's where we have to turn on the light. Right? We have to turn on the light, and we have to focus on turning on the inner light by connecting with divinity and filling our hearts with spiritual desires. And that is how we transcend sensual desires. We don't want to stay in this material realm, just like white knuckling it and trying not to bump into things that are going to hurt us. No, we want to transcend these desires to spiritual desires. And that's what bhakti yoga is, right? We engage our senses in serving divinity. That's what we do. And it's a whole process. It teaches us different ways to do this. It's so beautiful, through music, through offering food, through chanting, chanting on tulsi beads. This is just meditation, chanting God's names. We're connecting with God through sound and through touch. And this is the process. And what we find is if we lend a little bit of our time each day to these practices, a little bit of time, over time, we'll say, oh, that's actually, I really like that part of my day. That's feeling good. I'm going to increase that. And then you find as you increase that, you get more benefit. You feel more connected. You get more happiness. And there's no danger in it. It's like a beautiful way that these spiritual practices work, because it'll just keep giving you happiness. It doesn't end. So that's the process. That's what we want to do. We want to replace our lower desires with higher desires. In the example, when we talked about an alcoholic, at first he'll be controlling his senses by just determination. And that's a good step. We have to get there. We have to recognize where we are and try to control it a little bit. But beyond that, we have to seek purification, so that eventually, by connecting with divinity, right? So that eventually our desires will disappear. And that's when you really can conquer the addiction and become purified. And the duration of this can vary. Unfortunately, it's not like, okay, you do this and it'll be gone, and it takes about 10 days. And, it's not so prescriptive. It varies. Some desires, they'll go away quick, some more gradual, some more super slow, depending on how ingrained that desire is in your being and how really attached and addicted you are to it. It might take some time, and that's okay. Just keep steady with the process, but they will start to loosen their grip on you. And that will happen. In spiritual life, we don't even necessarily have to worry so much. If you come into spiritual life with all these bad habits, that's okay. Stick to the process, and they will take care of themselves. It's like we have those cups of dirty water, and as we're pouring in clean water, the dirty water is coming out. And that's the process. That's what we're doing here. And it works. It works, because just repression is not recommended. Redirection is sustainable. And this last thing I'll say about this verse before I want to hear from you guys, there's this beautiful quote in the purport. An example of fire is often given to demonstrate this. The quote says, "As a blazing fire burns everything within a room, the Lord, situated in the heart of the yogi, burns up all kinds of impurities." And that's what happens. The purification of the heart. It's getting rid of the beliefs that these things outside of us will make us happy. And it's enforcing the belief that a relationship with God will make us happy. And that's the process. So what do you guys think about that verse? Please share. Trevor, please share with us.
I just find everything you said was amazing. Very, very well put. Very, very well put. I find there's a great liberation, and when you come to the understanding that you're not going to be able to get rid of your desires, you're not going to be able to not have thoughts. It's the idea of increasing the quality of your thinking and your desires, or in other words, graduating them from material to spiritual. So it's whenever there's different religions and so on that will teach you to try to create no thoughts or to eliminate your desires, but that actually creates resistance. When you realize that you're not going to be able to do that, then you can focus on observation, coming into a deeper state of observation, and just not identifying or attaching yourself to those thoughts that don't serve you. You're able to, just observe and let go as they're coming into your field of observation. The devotional service is so powerful, because through the simple methods of chanting and whatnot, you're able to gain strength in that position as the observer. And it's just like you said, everything you said was perfect. You're able to, as a byproduct, let go of all these vices that naturally lose their strength and grip over you as you're increasing your strength spiritually through your sadhanas, through all your practices, whether it be kirtan, kata, Krishna kata, like we're doing now, group association, all of these things, yoga, all these forms of yoga go hand in hand and do the same thing. When our primary focus is not to get rid of these things, we stop beating ourselves up over it when it happens. When our primary focus is on the little bit of progress we're making each day or each moment, whatever the case may be, then we start actually making some serious leaps forward and whatnot.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. And I love how you kind of normalized it. You know, that's what the Gita does for us. It says you're gonna have desires. Like you're not gonna be able to get rid of your desires. They're gonna be there. But this is what you can do about it. So don't be surprised when you feel them. Don't be surprised when you start feeling your vehicle veering off the side of the road. That's gonna happen. But this is how you correct. And this is what we do. Thank you. Spring, please share with us.
Hi, I was just curious. So, like, we're replacing some of the, I agree, right? Like the temporary desire and replacing it with spiritual life, and kind of the more that we do that, the more joy that we're bringing in. But I also wonder, is there like a, I don't know, dark side, or is there some danger in, completely, I don't know, can we get addicted to that, or can we at some point like uh do too much sadhana or too much practice? Or what happens if we're just, do we chase Krishna consciousness at the you know um detriment to maybe our families or other
Yeah,
responsibilities? Is there, I don't know if the Gita might address that in a different, this might be like farther down the road, right? But for me, I always want to know, like, okay, so, where is there some signs or warning signs or some danger in that too?
that's such a great question, and such a couple things come to mind. Is one, sometimes we can get involved in spiritual practice and it can just be another manifestation of our ego, like just another identity cover, that we do to say, oh, I'm spiritual, look at how much I do. And that's not really spiritual, right? It's good that you're doing things, and that's better than not doing things, but we have to be careful also of the reason that we're doing things. Are we doing things so that we can be a part of a club, or say that we are and feel so great about ourselves? Because if we are, we're kind of missing the point, and the essence is connection with God. But if our practice, if we're really connected to the essence in our practice, if we're really connecting with God, we know, because we're becoming more compassionate, we're becoming more loving, we're becoming more selfless, and that spills over into our relationships. That if a person who's really practicing at the essence, that spills over. If you have a functional identity in this world as a mother, as a wife, as a husband, as a daughter, as a son, you naturally, because you're developing more of this love in your heart, you naturally want to share that more with these people around you. If you're practicing at the essence, you're going to be showing up to those relationships at a higher level. You're going to be your cup's going to be full, and it's going to be ready to overflow into all of these relationships, and those people will feel that and experience that. So it's not just like neglecting my social responsibilities and saying, I'm just going to sit here and chant. No, if you're really practicing at its essence, what it should do is it should enhance all of your functional identities in a way that levels them up and brings them higher, and allows you to show up and resonate and share that love at a higher frequency. So we do have to be careful. The balance is important. We can't just sit and neglect our families and do these things all day. We have to be aware of our functional identities in this world, because we all have them. And our goal, also a big part of this, is spreading God consciousness. And we do that by spreading love. That's That's it. That's our dharmic responsibility, is to spread God consciousness. So if your practice is making you more of an asshole, you're not doing it right, you know? It should be making you more, and that's again, it's just a check engine light. Okay. My family's feeling neglected all the time. And sometimes, there is a transition period because it's weird, if you have a partner and all of a sudden you're spending an hour a day on your sadhana, and that's taking some time away from, what they had with you, that there is kind of a transition, a kind of balance point. But at the end of the day, fast forward a couple years, they should see a change in you such that they encourage you doing that, because they see how much it does for your contribution to the family. And that's been my experience. But I did have that point when I first got in. It's kind of easy to get a little fanatical when you first get in, and that can be a little bit dangerous. It can be. You can kind of say, "Oh, this is the higher vibration. This is what I'm going to do." And and but hopefully that kind of fizzles out, and you get a little bit more balanced, and your family sees that in you, and uh and it comes back up. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
I'd like to share
But
something on that.
yeah, please.
You know, I grew up, my parents, they were like young devotees, they started in like the 80s, and a lot of that fanatical thinking was going around. And coming back into Krishna consciousness, that's been something I've had to like retrain my negative conditioning on, is like, oh, just give everything up and just think of Krishna. But or it's like so many husbands left their families because they were like, oh, this is Maya and it's dragging me into hell, and a lot of families were abandoned. And it was really, really a dangerous mentality was going around at one point around about that. So I see exactly what you're saying, and like, where do we, and you're so right, Radha Preeti, we have to find that balance of like, okay, I'm practicing this so I can show up as a better person, not I'm practicing this to detach from everybody. I think there's like that sense of false detachment that can come about of like, but really it's the intention behind it is like a fear or like a lack of responsibility. Whereas like when we're really practicing, actually, even in the Gita, it's like we're still supposed to perform our duty. We're supposed to become more responsible, more attentive. And, that was never Srila Prabhupada's mood, was for people to give up their families or anything like that. There's quotes where he says, you treat your child like they're a deity, that's your worship your child like they're God, not worship them, but treat them like they're God, treat them like they're a part and parcel of Krishna. And that's been one of the ways I've been retraining my mind from all of that negative conditioning, because I could see it in myself, that desire to avoid responsibility and just like, go to the woods and chant. And like, it's like, I can see it in myself sometimes. But my mother was never like that. So it's like, it's interesting. I have both sides in me. But anyways, the way I've retrained my mind is to say like, everything belongs to Krishna. So I care for it as though it is Krishna's. And when we can apply that intention to our daily tasks, to me, it's just like, it just helps my heart feel like, okay, I'm doing this for Krishna, and then it's not really a selfish motive. And it's not like this drudgery of like, oh, I got to clean my house because it's drudgery. It's, oh, I have to clean my house because I get to clean my house because it's Krishna's. It becomes more of a service in that point. And it just changes the mentality a little bit. But anyways, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And we also don't need to get, our spiritual practice is not just limited to the time that we're, singing in a kirtan or chanting japa or reading these scriptures. Really, our spiritual practice happens when we, encounter that first jerk on the road on our way to work, or we get in a disagreement with our spouse about X, Y, or Z, right? How are we going to show up? How are we going to show up in a more understanding, loving, compassionate way? I know I'm a planner and I always have quite a plan of what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it. And for me, sometimes my spiritual practice is when I'm in the middle of a plan and I'm in task mode, which is like, don't mess with me. I'm in task mode. If my husband says, hey, can you help me with this real quick? Dropping what's on my mind, what I think I need to get done, and showing up for him. That's like, I know it's like, sounds like a silly thing, but for me, I'm so task oriented that it's hard for me in that moment to stop without frustration. But just to say, you know what, I'm doing not that important, and show up for him. That's a spiritual practice for me to do that, and something I would have never done before I got into this. So it's also kind of identifying those things within ourselves that inhibit us from getting to show up in a more loving, selfless way, just because.
Yeah.
Right? So that's.
I love that. I love that. I think there's like probably like a Christian quote or something, and it's like, you find God in the 5 minutes on, like you said, on the drive to work, or like, you can find him in every moment of your life. We'll get to that point too in the Gita, where Krishna says, just think of me always. And if we're thinking of him always in everything we're doing, then we're connecting with him, So, yeah.
Yeah. And it will happen naturally. It's not like if you're brand new, it's even realistic for you to sit and dedicate 4 or 5 hours to your sadhana. That's not even realistic, and doing it could kind of force something before you're ready for it. It's best just to start off and then try to implement some of these practices. And then naturally, as you're ready for it and as it will serve your higher purpose, it will extend, and it'll just happen. You don't even really have to worry about it. So if you just start where you are somewhere, maybe you're chanting 1 round a day, coming to a couple sanghas a week, maybe you're going to a kirtan a week, whatever whatever you're doing, just set it up, commit to it, and then see what happens. And then it'll naturally expand as you're ready for it, and as it will benefit your life, such as your life is ready for it. Trevor, is your hand still up from the last time, or do you have something more?
It's up again. I have.
Oh, great. What do you have for us?
Lakshmi just. We haven't heard from Lakshmi though. She can go first.
Trevor. Oh, Trevor. Lakshmi, do you want to share with us?
That's fine, Trevor. You can share first.
You win. So just real quick, another Prabhupada quote came up about addiction. That was a really good question from Spring, but he says addiction's gonna exist, attachment's still gonna exist whenever we're learning renouncement or detachment. So instead of being addicted over sense gratification and attached to sense gratification, become addicted to Krishna, and then your addictions are purified. Become attached to Krishna, it's a purified. But there's a better word for it when that happens. It's attraction, And like Radha said, it's not just your sadhana whenever you're engaged in a 100% spiritual practice that's your service. This book teaches you how to merge your entire life into devotional service, and how to see the soul purification process within your every circumstance in life. It doesn't end whenever you put down your japa beads. It never does. Even whenever we graduate from our material bodies, this devotional service is an eternal activity and process. That's the beauty of it, is to notice that it's always happening and it's never going to end. It's a beautiful thing. And it does increase the quality of your material life too. It actually helps you to access a deeper sense of joy when you're engaging in it.
And connection with your relationships that you have. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Trevor.
Thank you.
Lakshmi, let's hear from you.
Yes, just I wanted to share one of my experiences about the family and how they respond to our taking of Krishna consciousness. So when I came into Krishna consciousness, it was uh, late 40s. So by the time my children are in teenage, my older daughter, she was about 17 or 18 years old by then. And she was just about to go to college. And she was in senior high. At that time, I took up Krishna consciousness, and my daughter was thinking that mom is taking up this as an escape. He's getting into your bubble. She actually told me that. You are getting into your bubble. There is no such thing. You are just trying to escape from the reality and all that. And I did not say anything to her, and I continued doing my practice. But she gradually started noticing that I am spending more time with her and her sister. And she's like, so gradually now, after so many years, she is like, she understood mom did not escape from her duties. Actually, she has taken up the duties more. I'm not very fluent in English, so I mean, so she has taken up her duties um, more seriously, and she is actually doing something good for the family. That's that she started realizing. And now she is kind of turning a little bit positive towards what I am doing. So I hope that will inspire her in future, and she also comes into this path. But I see the change in her, and that I realized, I started realizing in the past couple years that she is more appreciative of what I am doing for the family, and than opposed to what she was thinking, that I'm trying to escape the duties and I'm trying to hide in a bubble. That's all I wanted to share.
Wow. And I know Lakshmi, and I know how sincere you are and how sincere your practice is. So what you just said is really just a testament to that as well. It's beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Hare Krishna.
Lisa, what do you have for us?
Good morning. Well, it's really funny. It's very similar to what Lakshmi was sharing. But first of all, I love this, because this is it just feels like the heart of the matter. And I remember when I first started intensifying my devotion and really deciding to surrender and go next level, which did require a shift in how I behaved and the way I thought about things and the way I spoke about things. And I remember when I first gave birth to my daughter, my friends staged a spiritual intervention to tell me I had gone too far. Like you got to reel it back in. You know what I mean? It's all about your practices and you're around these other people. And I, remember just sitting there in the car because they had me all in the car and they were like, you gotta, come back. And I was thinking, I can't go back because I set an intention and I made a decision, like a clear decision that this was a shift in my life in the direction of my heart and my love, and persisted. And so too much became a conversation, right? What was too much for them versus what was too much for me and what was on my heart to do, be, and have. And now, as a result of walking that walk, I've become a place of peace for so many of those same friends and family in my life. And the idea that spirituality or love has to be caught from someone who has it, and so I had to persist in my walk. And I think that the list is true and incredible, that even though it may have seemed from a withdrawal in some ways, in other ways it became an intense way to show and demonstrate my love. So I just wanted to offer that as a comment. Thank you for that.
Wow. That's beautiful. And yeah, such a good point. It might take a little bit of rearranging of some of our relationships. Some some might be used to getting more of your time and attention. And it's definitely a two-sided street. You know, you have to kind of figure out that balance. But it sounds like you did, and you got through it and to the other side where then they did feel like you had more to offer them. That's beautiful. Thank you. Devi Radhika, can you share with us?
Yeah, my heart's so happy because I think this conversation will open your heart soon with that little one on the way. I can really resonate and appreciate what everyone is saying, and I'm looking at Poppy's comment in the chat as well.
Let's read this. Let's read this comment.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, not
Poppy
at
says,
all.
does Gita say anything about conflict between duties towards the self versus duties towards family, friends, people in general? When is it okay to choose you and let others go, but there's a guilt of letting go of family members because it's my duty to show up for them as well? Okay, now go. Let's go back. I don't know if you were gonna say
Well, I
anything
was
to
going
that,
to
so
kind of
maybe-
touch on that as well as what other people have said. And thank you for reading. That's so sweet. My point being to the prior conversation is I mean, I have 3 teenage girls, and for them, I didn't come into this practice until my late 40s. And what a gift for me, but it was a real, and still continues to, one, be a real transition for the family. They like to kind of joke around. They like to kind of like poke around and this and that. But and that's fine, because that's just who we are when we get together. Like, Ma, you're chanting and dancing in foreign tongue. Like, I'm like, it's all good. But what I've noticed, to speak to Lakshmi and what Lisa was saying, is that, their path is their path. They're almost 19, 16, and 14. And, and they struggle. The struggle is real for all of us, depending on, regardless, I should say, of our age. And, I try not to push, but I realize through the shifts in my behavior and my thinking and my practice and what they're witnessing, my 16-year-old thinks I've completely lost my mind, and that's fine. That's where she's at. But I know that the seed is there. And when and if it's ready to grow, that's her decision. Whereas my youngest is, my 14-year-old's really kind of like, hey, maybe I will go to that kirtan with you, or can I maybe check? I'm like, of course. She comes to Seva and things like that. And I think over time, they start to see or find like their own way, and maybe they incorporate all of it or none of it, but at least them being able to witness the change in the connection that we have as humans to, in this form, to Krishna, has an impact whether we see it or not in one way or another. But that struggle of, how do I then find my space to develop that without the guilt, without the, I need to go bring this one to the doctor. I've told you for 2 weeks that you're fine and you have walking pneumonia. Like, yay, guilt mom, but I know in my core, when I take the time to do what brings me higher and closer and uplifts me, that it makes me that much better of a mom for them, because I'm not reactive, because I have gathered that strength and refilled my well, and I am in my light. But it is really hard to take a step back without that kind of guilt for me. And speaking of guilt, going to what Poppy had said, if I'm reading it correctly, it's a little bit different. Perhaps she's asking, maybe we read it again and answer and talk somewhat about that. It's asking, I think she's asking not so much of like, how do I take care of myself and my family, but I'm wondering if she's asking like those boundaries that we have to set up when we know that that family member or friends or people in general might still be in that toxic mode for us. How can I still, in letting go, keep up my duty to helping and serving them, but in a healthy way that it doesn't damage me. And I might just be, I did get it right. Okay. I think that's a really huge question and really important.
Yeah. You know, I love what you said, how you were talking about your relationship with your daughters, and you recognize, you know, they're on their own path and they're going to have to make a decision. And but also it was apparent in what you were sharing of how much love you had for them. And I think that's really, again, a testament to when you know that you've kind of struck the right balance is when you can show up with that. You can show up holding space for them, allowing them to be them with a level of detachment, a healthy level of detachment. You know, this is their path, but still just pouring love into them. And when you're at that place, you've hit the mark, because sometimes our response is one of like, you know, we take it personally. It fills us with anger or fear or control. You know, when we're in those kinds of modes, we know that we haven't struck the right balance. You know, we know that we're still kind of in an ego-centered mentality, and we need to kind of reevaluate our balance, because those are the things that turn people off. But if we've struck the right balance, then we can show up just like those things that you said. And that's beautiful. Yeah, we could read Poppy's question again here and talk about it maybe a little bit. Does Gita say anything about conflict between duties towards the self versus duties towards family, friends, people in general? When is it okay to choose you and let others go, but there's a guilt of letting go of family members because it's my duty to show up for them as well? Yeah, this I think is a loaded question. I'll kind of share a couple things and then maybe others can chime in here too. But ultimately, we have to put our oxygen mask on first before we can put others on. I mean, that's just a given, or we're giving from an empty cup. And like we talked about, we get into these unhealthy dynamics like codependency, where we're trying to add value to their life, really just to get value to ours, right? And that can be kind of a dangerous place to be. So we want to make sure we're giving from a full cup. And in that, we, just like Devi Radhika said, we have to establish kind of some boundaries around it. You know, I know my mom comes to visit me, and when she comes, she wants to spend every second together, which is so sweet. But I know I have to spend a couple hours in the morning for my sadhana, or I can't show up. And it's actually, it was really uncomfortable a little bit for me, because she's sitting on the couch and I'm in the other room chanting, and I know that she's just like waiting for me. And I feel like bad about it. But at the same time, I know that like, if I don't do this, I'm like later in the day, I'm going to pay for it. Like, you know, I'm not going to be able to be as patient or understanding or kind or loving. Like I know that I need to do this. So there's a little bit of like tension there, a little bit of weirdness. But then it all comes out, you know, just like we keep talking about. In the long run, they see that how much it really is benefiting you, and it becomes easier to accept. But you do have those people that are just never going to accept, and that are just, they're going to be, it's going to be kind of like pulling teeth. And in that, yeah, you have to maybe establish a little bit tougher boundaries. You know, like when I started practicing, my dad, who was very Catholic, said a lot of really kind of terrible things about what I was doing. He kind of went crazy, to be honest with you, to the point where I had to stop talking to him for a while. I actually didn't even invite him to my wedding in that year. It was really a tough time. We had a strained relationship anyway. He's an alcoholic, and we had kind of a strained relationship anyway. But now, he, like, after that kind of period, he comes back, and now he's sending me like Shiva statues for my birthday, which I don't even think he knows what they are. I think he just gets on and Googles Hindu statues and sends me. And we talk about the similarities between Christianity and Catholicism and what I practice. And it's different. It's not the kind of close relationship that I always dreamed of having with my dad. You know, we're never going to check in all the time, and there's a distance there. But we just both kind of had to get comfortable with that distance without forcing a relationship dynamic that is just never going to exist for us. And in that, we find a level of love and respect and compassion that's natural. But forcing a closeness that was just never going to happen, I don't think we would have ever got there, as much as both of us wanted to in our own ways. So sometimes it's just kind of accepting different relationship dynamics and showing up where you can when you can. Does anybody else have anything they want to say to that? Trevor. Oh, I saw you shared a little on the chat here too. I'm behind on this chat.
Yeah, I was just gonna say how I responded to Hopi, because it can be confusing. It really can, because there are a lot of distractions on the path when you're trying to develop and you're trying to get in the groove and whatnot. A lot of Krishna gets really creative with organizing diversions and adversities for you, but whenever you realize they're actually there to help you progress, it's like you get into the groove even better, you know. But the loved ones especially are here to help us develop, whether they're opposing what we're doing or they're supportive of it. They're still playing a major part in helping us develop spiritual qualities. So I noticed, like, when I'm helping my stepdad, even though he's still pretty addicted and engaged in material things, I like to I like to help him with certain things as long as it's not detrimental to what I'm doing. Like, I don't go hunting with him or nothing like that, but I will go help him with the yard and whatnot like that, and do whatever he's doing. I like to just be his company, and it feels good to him to know that I don't think I'm better than you. You know, and as he's actually starting to get more attracted to Krishna through me, because he's noticing these things. It's like, I'm not doing this stuff because I'm trying to avoid you, or that I think I'm better than you, or trying to expose you in any type of way. I'm doing it simply because it's the right thing to do, you know. And he's noticing how it's helping me and helping my mother and everyone, and teaching my son so many things. And our relationship is so strong, our bond is so pure. And even just like the material stuff, like helping him with his schoolwork and helping him developmentally and stuff like that. And uh I notice how much it's helping me, you know. And Krishna's really attracted to that servant of the servant mentality. It's like, you don't have to be preaching about Krishna 100% of the time. You can still engage in material things and still be developing spiritually. Like, you're developing humility, you're developing a deep sense of humbleness and gratitude and whatnot whenever you step down from what you're doing and help other people out. So we actually are, the people around us give us a great opportunity to serve ourselves and to serve Krishna through the portal of their hearts.
That's beautiful.
Thank
you
you
so much for sharing that, Trevor.
Thank you.
Nice. Does one more person want to share before we end for the day? One more share?
Yeah, I can. I totally agree with Trevor about we don't disconnect with loved ones, but the only thing is we don't encourage their bad behaviors, and we help them in the way they can do better, and they feel more dependency on us. Oh, she or he are there for me when I need help. So that kind of a mentality they will develop. First of all, to do that, we have to build our own inner strength. If we are strong within our heart, then we would be able to help others and not get affected by other people's views, or if they argue, if you don't get affected by all those things. So sometimes I don't argue at all. I simply listen to them, and I nod my head, and I just simply stay quiet. And when the time comes, then I speak or I do act. My actions, they will see. So that's how my family is like. They accepted me, my brother or my cousins, or all of them. They were all also were not too much happy when I took Krishna consciousness. Actually, my cousin was like, she was arguing with me in the beginning, and I did not participate in her. I did not want to discuss with her anything. And she's like, okay, what you say is also correct, but I chose this way. I will follow this. And so now they know that I am really fixed into this. And so our relationship are not strained. So everybody is like, we're still family, and we all get along well when we meet. It's a happy family. Everybody has
Wow.
their own views, but the thing is, they will see the change in us, and if they want, they can come in this path, or they can continue with their own. It's the choice is theirs. Sorry,
Thank you.
I'm like I
No,
said,
you're
I'm not very fluent. I don't know how I'm expressing my views.
you're wonderful, and you're such a
Mhm.
beautiful example of that inner strength. Again, I know
Hari-
from knowing
Thank you.
you. So
Hari. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
I noticed that Lisa's mute was off. Lisa, do you want to share one last thing before we leave here?
I'm just in such appreciation for the question, to really hear, because it feels like this is getting into the weeds of it, the practice and how to really integrate into our lives, spirituality, Krishna consciousness. I mean, these are the questions that we are faced when we're not sitting here with the book in our hand. You know what I mean? These are the ways that we are actually interacting with those who we've decided to share our lives with. A powerful discussion, and thank you, everyone.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
much
really,
beautiful
thank you.
insight. Thank you. And Neil,
Thank
do you
you,
want to finish
Poppy,
us
for the
off?
question.
Yeah. Spring and Puffy, you guys had. Yeah, that was great. Thank you. Neil, do you want to say one last thing?
Yeah. Just reflecting as a dad to two daughters. When I started this practice, my younger daughter loved it. She'd go chant with me. My older daughter thought it was a little weird, but the way that, because I loved myself and trusted myself, I was able to talk to my older daughter about things that dads, I don't know, are supposed to talk about with their teenage daughters, about how she should respect herself when she is with men, and how not to do things because she felt that they wanted it, but to do things because she wanted it. And I know that she really got that she understood that I truly loved her in a way that our souls wouldn't have connected if I wasn't amidst this practice. So it brought me to a different level of being a father, and then also once I started to love myself, others clients of mine noticed a difference, because I would ask them questions about non-client things, and they were as eager to talk about their lives and their troubles as I found so much out about my clients, and so it became a different relationship. So anyway, that's my comment for the moment. Thank you, guys.
So nice. Thank you. Thank you all for coming and sharing your hearts and experiences. This has really become such a safe place for all of us. I'm so appreciative of you all. People have asked me if I plan on doing this after I have a baby. The answer is yes. Probably take off 1 or 2 weeks, probably 2 weeks, and then I'll probably come back. So we'll have a little break, but then we'll be back. So you don't get rid of me that easy.
Radha Priti, could you just remind people, if they're looking to join, where they would go so that they can join the WhatsApp for Seeker's Quest and get the links?
Yeah. That's Instagram. Our Instagram is Seeker's Quest 108, just straight Seeker's Quest 108. And then on the link tree, which is in the bio, we have a link tree, and then you can click on and join the WhatsApp group, and then you can connect with us through that as well. So yeah, please come live. It's so nice to meet and hear and share together. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank
We'll see you.
you.
We'll see you
Thank you.
Thursday.
Thank you, brother.
Hare Krishna.
Haribol.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Bo.